Next on the 5 o'clock report.
Investors reacted to this, how they reacted to COVID.
This was the highest that I've seen it since I've lived here.
We're going to put this piece of steel up. We're calling it the topping off ceremony.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Another nosedive. In a game of tariff chicken, investors are the ones flinching. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. Tariff tension continues to grip the financial world. Another steep nosedive for Wall Street. CBS business reporter Kelly O'Grady says some financial folks are spooked.
Investors reacted to this as to how they reacted to COVID because they think some of the same things that happened during the pandemic could be borne out because of these tariffs. Higher inflation, consumer spending slowdown, and then ultimately potentially leading to economic growth slowing down.
Congressional Democrats have been quick to hammer the Trump administration tariff plan, including New York Democrat Chuck Schumer.
Donald Trump is betraying us.
But Trump says eventually everything will be coming up roses.
The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio at a NATO meeting in Brussels with a lot of worried EU members says don't hit the panic button.
I don't think it's fair to say economies are crashing. Markets are crashing because markets are based on the stock value of companies who today are embedded in modes of production that are bad for the United States.
While many industries are worried about the impact of reciprocal tariffs by Canada, Mexico, China, and other countries, Ethan Lane with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association tells Fox News he's taking the long view.
Nobody who imports or exports likes tariffs, us included, right? This is not a tool that we would pick if we had other options, but the president makes a very good point that for a very long time, we've had the raw end of a lot of these trade deals.
Just where did Wall Street land when the dust settled last hour? We'll have the end-of-week numbers for you later in this newscast. And not all of today's economic news was foreboding. The latest jobs report came up, and it was substantially better than expected. Bank of America economist Stephen Juneau tells CBS News.
There's still sectors that are hiring at a rapid rate. There's still strong demand underlying. And of course, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, but these fundamental factors for now are still supporting growth.
Today's report from the Labor Department shows employment rising by 228,000 last month versus 151,000 new jobs the month prior. The unemployment rate ticked up just slightly to 4.2%. Speaking of ticking, the clock's ticking on for TikTok. President Trump giving the China-based social media giant another extension, 75 days, to divest or face a permanent U.S. ban over security concerns. Chinese-based ByteDance was originally granted an extension from its original January 19th deadline. Trump says, quote, a ton of progress has been made, but adds the deal to sell the social media platform to a U.S. buyer still needs more work. A 1-2 severe weather punch continues. In addition to the threats of more deadly tornadoes today, 50 million people under threat of what forecasters warn could be, in some cases, generational flooding. This Arkansas man survived a tornado. His house did not.
Lost for words. Not really know what to say since you don't ever think it's going to hit you until it does. This morning you could wake up early and you got this weird feeling on your stomach and, just wanting to know where everything is.
At the same time, flood watches and warnings in several states again today, including southwestern Pennsylvania and most of Ohio. This man lives near a flooded Tennessee waterway.
This was the highest that I've seen it since I've lived here.
Fox meteorologist Janice Dean.
Flood watch for parts of Arkansas up towards the Ohio and Tennessee River Valley. We had 72 flash flood warnings yesterday and more of the same today, with upwards of 5 to 8 to 12 inches of heavy rain over the same areas.
And some of that rain is going to make it to our area by the weekend. WIVB meteorologist Mike Syka in Buffalo.
As we work toward tomorrow morning, moderate to heavy downpours contained in this. And with the ground still fairly saturated, we're going to experience some rises on the area's streams, creeks, and rivers, maybe getting up to Bankful. Hopefully they won't exceed Bankful.
Our own Kevin Williams tracking all of it, his up-to-date forecast just ahead. Do you work from home? Should members of Congress be allowed to vote from home? They're debating that in a bill to allow House members with newborns to vote remotely, something that the Democratic majority allowed during the pandemic.
Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who's leading the effort, says she spoke with House Speaker Mike Johnson about limiting the plan to just new moms who can't physically travel in the event of an emergency. Some critics, though, are still against the proposal, arguing it's unconstitutional.
That's Fox correspondent Ryan Schmelz. Back home.
Braced for splashdown. Welcome home from 2.
4 civilians back home after becoming the first to fly over Earth's polar regions. They blasted off into space Monday in a SpaceX rocket from Florida's Kennedy Space Center and splashed down in the Pacific during the noon hour our time off the California coast. Still to come on the Noon Report, a major milestone hit in western New York, a unique church swap in Pennsylvania, and a recap of this week's Capital Connection.
The call for tonight, and the breeze will subside. It'll cool down. Skies will end up partly cloudy to occasionally clear in parts of western and central New York. A little more of the way of cloud cover in Pennsylvania with a spot of rain or drizzle there. Low temps 40s. For tomorrow, fair amount of sunshine in New York, fair amount of cloud cover in Pennsylvania with high temperatures mostly in the 50s. And it's rain arriving on Saturday, cloudy too, with high temps generally mid-50s to the middle 60s.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. Now checking the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, Governor Cuomo leading a group of VIPs who spoke before a crowd of about 1,000 at the site of the Buffalo Bills' new stadium in Orchard Park, New York today. The final piece of structural steel is laid into place. Team owner Terry Pagula.
So we're going to put this piece of steel up. We're calling it the topping off ceremony. It's the last piece of steel we're going to put on the stadium. I call it the first piece of building the rest of the stadium.
It marks about the halfway point in the overall construction of the new Highmark Stadium, set to open in the summer of next year, in time for the Bills to begin play there 2 seasons from now. Syracuse police say they arrested 2 teens at Henniger High School today after a staff member spotted them passing a handgun back and forth. Police say it was a so-called ghost gun, a weapon made from parts and which has no serial number. The teens were arrested without incident. The gun, a polymer 9mm handgun, was confiscated. The union representing New York State corrections officers has asked for an urgent meeting with corrections officials to address what the union says is a workplace crisis right now. Among the specifics, continuing staffing shortages and workplace conditions. Disease-carrying ticks are an unpleasant reality of warmer weather. Insect expert John Wallace is a retired entomologist at Millersville University in Pennsylvania, and he blames milder winters for a tick infestation.
Winter temperatures used to be so cold that these pests would die off and they wouldn't be such a problem. So we see that they're not dying off. We also see that as their ranges expand northward, they bring with them pathogens that can cause us problems.
Those ticks carry Lyme disease, which is on the rise in Pennsylvania, and have also carried Rocky Mountain spotted fever. A couple of Bradford, Pennsylvania churches say divine inspiration has led them to a plan to swap church buildings this spring. Leaders at Open Arms Community Church and First Baptist Church of Bradford say the move, first announced last year, will happen on this Palm Sunday, when each congregation holds its first service in the other's building. The pastor of Open Arms says they felt led to serve people in the downtown Bradford area. Both buildings will undergo some renovation work to tailor them to their new congregations. All right, up next, highlights from today's edition of Capital Connection. We'll hear from our Bob Price and guest Dan Bartkowiak with the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire with New York Families. 2 of the tough topics the team tackled today: efforts to preserve female sports from so-called transgender athletes and protecting the preborn from Planned Parenthood.
Well, Dan, Pittsburgh Democrat Lindsey Williams, she's a liberal state senator from Western PA, making headlines recently while decrying the Save Women's Sports Act, which passed out of committee recently. It would basically ban biological boys and girls sports. Senator Williams said, and I want to quote her directly and get your reaction, quote, "Female bodies are just as strong, fast, and capable as male bodies." Capable, yes. The other 2, fast and strong. She might have a few naysayers there. Your thoughts on what the senator said on this contentious issue?
Yeah, I was in the audience for the committee vote, and in her prepared remarks, starting off with that just made me completely shocked. And I think the average person understands that too. Her comments there have already garnered almost 1 million views because the average person understands it's just absurd and fantasy land to say that girls are fast as strong in these athletic competitions. You know, Lindsey Williams was saying after the vote, kind of laughing about it, saying, well, they didn't stop Michael Phelps from, competing because he had a physical advantage. And it's just this fantasy land that we think boys and girls are on the same level. level, why do we have different sports for boys and girls? By her rationale, we should just have all one sport. And so it's, again, underscores why we need to save women's sports and need a bill like that here in Pennsylvania.
Jason, over 150 pro-life groups have signed a letter urging Congress to defund Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion provider. But it's not the behemoth that it used to be. In fact, one of the largest Planned Parenthoods in the country has just shut down in Manhattan. Why is Planned Parenthood experiencing such financial difficulty when it receives so much money from the government?
Well, essentially, Planned Parenthood takes the dollars they receive and they direct so many of those dollars to political activity rather than patient care. And that's a problem for Planned Parenthood because they are increasingly, we're seeing medical issues occurring at their facilities. There was one facility, for example, where sewage was running under the doors, and there were some issues there with patient care, obviously, and what's proper care. But with an emphasis on political activity and with the country swinging a different direction now on the politics of Planned Parenthood, it is having an impact on that entity.
Yeah. They're trying to reinvent themselves, Jason, but not in a good way. Explain what's going on with Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood has always been known as the abortion behemoth, and they continue to provide abortions all across the country. But they are now moving further and further into the transgender front, and they are offering hormonal treatments and other things as a way to bring in some revenue and to shore up their bottom line. Remember, Planned Parenthood is always about the profit, not the patient care.
Yeah. Dan, you've been warning for months, your organization, about Planned Parenthood's efforts to infiltrate school board elections this year in Pennsylvania. What's their strategy, and how can Pennsylvania voters interfere with that strategy?
Yeah, and I'd echo what Jason said. The profit margins are really what their priority is versus actually patient care. And they've specifically stated in Pennsylvania they want to shut down every pregnancy resource center in the state. They want to sandblast every type of limit when it comes to abortion, whether it's regulations on abortion facilities in terms of inspections, to doing abortions at any stage that are funded by taxpayers. And so it's, again, with school boards, they view this as they want to get more customers, frankly. They want to staff offices in high schools where their abortion facility is just down the road. So they've really shown their cards. They're really kind of brazen about this, and it needs more people understanding at that local level. If we give them more control, the impact on our children is going to be devastating.
Dan Bartkowiak with the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire with New York Families speaking with our Bob Price. Capital Connection airs Fridays during the noon report. You can hear it online, lots of places. Subscribe to, listen to, and share all of Family Life's original podcast features at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or at familylife.org. Up next, your nightly market report brought to you by Faithward Advisors. Stocks extended steep losses to end a brutal week on Wall Street. The market was slammed for a second straight day after China retaliated with new tariffs, sparking fears President Trump may have ignited a global trade war. Tech shares and financial stocks were among the hardest hit sectors, with the major averages falling more than 5.5% in a broad sell-off. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 2,231 points to 38,314. The S&P 500 lost 322 points to 5074, and the Nasdaq plunged 962 points to 15,587. Faithward Advisors, a Christian financial planning firm helping faithful stewards do more. Details are available at faithwardadvisors.com. This is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
There's more to retirement stewardship than getting the numbers right. Hi, I'm Rob West with the Faith and Finance Minute. I want to share a bit of a blog post by Chris Cagle from his blog Retirement Stewardship. Chris notes that when people plan for retirement, they focus almost exclusively on things like Social Security, Medicare, and their personal retirement funds. Those are important, but also pay attention to what Chris calls the non-financials of retirement, such as the sense of loss that goes with no longer having a job. What about purpose and direction for your retirement years? How will you spend your time productively? By all means, prepare financially for retirement. That's wise stewardship. But so is planning for the non-financials. Don't wait until you retire to start thinking, what now? Connect with a certified Kingdom advisor who's been trained to deliver financial advice that aligns with your Christian values by visiting our website, faithfi.com.
Coming up on the 5 o'clock report, a happy ending for a Pennsylvania cop turned cowboy.
I'm Kevin Williams, and here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. The weekend is upon us, and the weather looks decidedly not nice. Low pressure will be bringing rain overnight tonight and tomorrow. Some leftover drizzle and chilly weather on Sunday. By early next week, it'll be snowing in parts of the area. In the meantime, no issues this evening. Clouds will be increasing, though, and then we do expect some showers to arrive in far western New York and western Pennsylvania with some rumbles of thunder. Temperatures will fall back into the mid-30s to mid-40s. And for tomorrow, it's cloudy, periods of rain, high temps 50s and low 60s, and breezy through the Finger Lakes and Twin Tiers. On Sunday, it's cloudy and chillier, just a spot of rain or drizzle for most, maybe a few wet flakes in the higher elevations. High temperature Sunday, primarily in the 40s.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. Finally at 5, it was a neat story already when Chester County, Pennsylvania Police Sergeant Ted Lewis managed to round up a miniature horse that had managed to escape its enclosure and was in harm's way, dodging traffic on a nearby highway. The mini mare, named April, had just arrived at Horse Angels Rescue Farm a day earlier after being surrendered. Sergeant Lewis tells KYW-TV April eventually showed up right behind their police station.
We were happy that the horse did the right thing by coming and seeking out the police when they were lost. We had a dog leash that we hooked onto her bridle, and that was it. And she just walked down the street with me like it was her daily job.
And in fact, it looks like it will become a regular thing for April and her newfound friend, who hit it off instantly and moved Sergeant Lewis to adopt her.
When I met the horse, it was just a sweet, sweet horse. We have some room at a farm that we're associated with, and I just thought that it would be a nice addition to our farm and our family to be able to give this little horse its forever home.
Well, the police department had some fun with the episode too, posting on social media about their new miniature mounted unit. Now, time to giddy up on out of here. That's the world we live in for Friday, April 4th, 2025. Thank you again for joining us. Have a blessed weekend. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.